You've made a mockery of our country's refugee process, turning it into a system of global apartheid where political ideology and race, more than truth or need, matter.
Senator Van Hollen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, you and I served together in Congress for 15 years. We didn't always agree, but I believe we shared some common values: a belief in defending democracy and human rights abroad and honoring the Constitution at home. That's why I voted to confirm you. I believed you would stand up for those principles. You haven't. You've done the opposite. And you used to speak with conviction about the importance of foreign aid as a tool to advance American values and interests. Then you stood by while Elon Musk took a chainsaw to USAID and other assistance programs. That has left a staggering toll: broken trust with countries, openings for China and other adversaries, and countless preventable deaths of children and others. Take Sudan, for example. The freezing of U.S. humanitarian assistance forced the closure of nearly 80% of the emergency food kitchens there. 2 million famine-affected people were left without access to food. People died because of those actions: mothers, fathers, and children. Tons of emergency food that could have saved their lives was left rotting in warehouses because you and Elon Musk refused to let USAID do its job. Sudan is a country where, by the administration's own determination, a genocide is unfolding in Darfur. But here's where it goes from cruel to despicable. While cutting off food aid to Sudanese families living through an actual genocide, you're fast-tracking white South Africans for refugee status under a manufactured claim that they are the victims of genocide. You tried to block the admission of individuals who had already been approved to come here as refugees while making bogus claims to justify granting such status to Afrikaners. You've made a mockery of our country's refugee process, turning it into a system of global apartheid where political ideology and race, more than truth or need, matter.
What we just witnessed was more than a heated exchange in a Senate hearing. It was a moral collision, a clash between two visions of what America represents in the world and at home. Senator Chris Van Hollen wasn't merely questioning a Secretary of State. He was challenging a philosophy of governance that has grown comfortable with cruelty, indifference, and selective compassion. Van Hollen began not with anger, but with disappointment, a disappointment that felt deeply human. He reminded the Secretary that they once shared the same core values: democracy, human rights, and the defense of constitutional principles. It was not just political theater. It was the heartbreak of seeing someone you once respected choose silence over conscience, power over humanity. And that heartbreak was justified, because when Van Hollen spoke about Sudan, a country on the brink of collapse, where the freezing of U.S. humanitarian aid has left millions without food, he wasn't speaking in abstractions. He was describing children dying with food within reach, food that rotted in warehouses because of bureaucratic decisions and political games. He was describing parents forced to watch their children waste away while the richest nation on earth turned its gaze elsewhere. That's not foreign policy. That's moral negligence.
And while you've turned away from a genocide in Sudan and invented one in South Africa, you teamed up with President Trump to throw the Ukrainian people under the bus and have been played like a fiddle by Vladimir Putin. Of course, Donald Trump not only said he would end the war in Ukraine on day one, he also said he would end the war in Gaza on day one. And yet last week, you were all running around to Gulf states, giving away very sensitive American AI and chips technology, but doing nothing to end the war in Gaza and get the remaining hostages returned. You know that for 78 days, the Netanyahu government did not allow a scrap of food to enter Gaza to reach over 2 million civilians. 57 children have died from malnutrition so far, and more than 14,000 children are in imminent danger of dying of starvation. As Cindy McCain said last week, and I quote, "Families in Gaza are starving while the food they need is sitting at the border." That is a gross violation of both U.S. and international law. What did you do? Nothing. Not once did you publicly call upon the Netanyahu government to end the blockade. Fortunately, other countries spoke out, and now we see a tiny trickle going in. Where have you focused your energy instead, Mr. Secretary? Well, your first trip as Secretary of State was to El Salvador, not to promote democracy, but to cozy up to President Bukele, who calls himself the world's coolest dictator. The result was a cash for collusion deal to deprive people living in America of their constitutional rights to due process. The Supreme Court, in a 9-0 decision, instructed you to facilitate the return to the United States of Abrego Garcia, who the administration admitted was wrongfully deported to El Salvador. Your response? You've openly flouted judicial orders. When asked whether you have been in touch with El Salvador to return Abrego Garcia, you boasted, quote, "I would never tell you that. And you know who else I would never tell? A judge." Clearly, you don't care about the Fifth Amendment right to due process, and you don't care about the First Amendment either, since you've been very busy snatching students off of college campuses for exercising their right to free speech. You dredged up a relic from the McCarthy era to claim that student protesters posed a threat to the foreign policy of the United States. Give me a break, Mr. Secretary. You know as well as I do this isn't about national security, it's about punishing free speech. And you know that in America, the government doesn't get to use its power to punish speech it doesn't like. Yet in March, you boasted about revoking student visas, saying, and I'm quoting, "We do it every day. Every time I find one of these lunatics, I take away their visa," unquote. Let's look at one of those lunatics, Mr. Secretary, Ms. Ozturk. Her crime was co-authoring an op-ed in her college paper critical of Tufts University's response to the war in Gaza. Your own department found 0 links to terrorism, no anti-Semitic statements, but you still yanked her visa and shipped her off to detention in Louisiana. And the list goes on and on. The federal judge in the case of Mohsen Madawi, who was the Columbia student who was ambushed by federal agents at his citizenship appointment, said, and I quote, this is the judge, "Legal residents not charged with crimes or misconduct are being arrested and threatened with deportation for stating their views on the political issues of the day. Our nation has seen times like this before, especially during the Red Scare and Palmer raids. Like the McCarthy-era witch hunts of the 1950s, your campaign of fear and repression is eating away at foundational values of our democracy. Back then, it took one voice, Attorney Joseph Welch, to cut through the hysteria with the simple question that marked the beginning of the end of that shameful era. He asked Senator McCarthy, have you no sense of decency? And I would ask you the same, Secretary Rubio. You have shown through your words and your actions what the answer is. And I have to tell you directly and personally that I regret voting for you for Secretary of State.
And Hollen's argument exposes something much deeper than budget cuts or diplomatic discretion. It exposes the ethical crisis that arises when political ideology replaces human empathy. When he said that the administration invented a genocide in South Africa while ignoring an actual one in Sudan, he was pointing to the dangerous redefinition of who qualifies for American compassion. When the refugee system becomes a mirror for political loyalty, where those who look or think a certain way are welcomed while others are discarded, America loses its soul. Refugee policy should be about need, not narrative, about humanity, not hierarchy. Yet what Van Hollen laid out was a system reshaped to favor ideological allies while shutting its doors on the desperate. That isn't leadership, it's moral hypocrisy. And the tragedy is, this hypocrisy doesn't stop abroad. It bleeds into the very core of our democracy. Van Hollen's accusations about the wrongful deportation of legal residents, the disregard for judicial rulings, and the silencing of student voices are not isolated events. They are symptoms of a government that has forgotten restraint. When a Secretary of State claims that no court can question how he conducts diplomacy, he isn't defending the Constitution, he's eroding it. America's strength has never come from unchecked power. It comes from the balance of power, from the rule of law, from a system designed to ensure that no one is above accountability. And when students are arrested or have their visas revoked simply for expressing political opinions that challenge the government or criticize foreign wars, we step into the shadow of our darkest chapters. Van Hollen invoked the memory of McCarthyism for a reason. Because once again, fear is being weaponized to suppress dissent. Once again, patriotism is being defined as obedience. But in democracy, patriotism is not silence, it's the courage to speak. It's easy to dismiss Van Hollen's fiery tone as partisan outrage. But beneath the fire is a warning every American should hear. When government power is used to punish thought, when aid is withheld as leverage, when empathy becomes optional, democracy begins to rot from the inside.
May I respond?
You may sit.
Well, first of all, your regret for voting for me confirms I'm doing a good job, based on what I know.
Well, that's just
your
a
record
flippant
and what you
statement,
stand
Mr.
for.
Secretary.
Can I respond, Mr. Chairman?
You may.
I didn't ask
Senator,
questions.
please let the Secretary have
I'd
the
be
floor.
happy to, but then I can respond to his
Your time's up, Senator, and willfully used, I might add.
Well,
your remarks do not represent the view of this committee.
Well, Mr.
Secretary, please.
Well, I can't respond to everything he said because much of these are untrue, but I'll go through a few. First of all, I'm actually very proud of the work we've done with USAID. For example, I don't regret cutting $10 million for male circumcisions in Mozambique. I don't know how that makes us stronger and more prosperous as a nation. I don't regret psychosocial support services.
I raised Sudan, Mr. Secretary.
Can I respond,
Senator, I'd ask you to suspend. You had 7 straight minutes.
I chose to use my time that way, Mr. Chairman. That's my right to
Please
use my time
suspend,
that way.
Secretary Rubio.
Well, I can go on. I mean, there's other things here. We spent $227,000 for Big Cat's YouTube channel from USAID. We spent $14 million for social cohesion in Mali, whatever the hell that means. So I can go on and on. I got the list here, and there's more. I didn't even bring the whole list. In the case of El Salvador, absolutely. Absolutely. We deported gang members, including the one you had a margarita with. And that guy is a human trafficker, and that guy is a gangbanger, and the evidence is going to be clear. In the days to come, you're going to see who you went to defend.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Secretary Rubio has the floor.
Mr. Chairman, he can't make unsubstantiated comments like that.
Secretary Rubio has the floor. You've had
Secretary
your time.
Rubio should take that testimony to the federal court of the United States because he hasn't done it under oath.
Here's another point, okay? There is a division in our government between the federal branch and the judicial branch. No judge in the judicial branch cannot tell me or the president how to conduct foreign policy. No judge can tell me how I have to outreach to a foreign partner or what I need to say to them. And if I do reach that foreign partner and talk to them, I have under no obligation to share that with the judiciary branch. Just like a judge cannot order me to negotiate with a foreign minister of Russia, they cannot order me to negotiate with a foreign minister or the president of El Salvador. And if I did negotiate with them, which we have responded to them, and we've told them we've had communications with the president of El Salvador, I am under no obligation, under our division of powers in this country, and to share with the judicial branch how I conduct the diplomacy of the United States. It would actually be counterproductive. If I started sharing with courts, or frankly, with the media, my conversations with foreign leaders and all of their details, no foreign leader would talk to me again, and we would break trust with them. So I have complied with every court order. What I won't comply with is an order to disclose what I'm saying and what we're talking about with a foreign leader, because then they won't talk to me. Diplomacy doesn't work that way. About the student visas, let me say this. I don't deport anybody, and I don't snatch anybody. The State Department does not have officers in the street snatching everybody. What I do is revoke visas, and it's very simple. A visa is not a right. It is a privilege. People apply for student visas to come into the United States and study. And if you tell me that you're coming to the United States to lead campus crusades, to take over libraries and try to burn down buildings and acts of violence, we're not going to give you a visa.
Is that what Ms. Ostorg did?
We're not going to give you a visa.
Is that what she did? Come on, Mr. Secretary.
And every single one of these cases, the factors are different. The bottom line is, if you're coming here to stir up trouble on our campuses, we will deny you a visa. And if you have a visa and we find you, we'll revoke it. And we're going to do more. There are more coming. We're going to continue to revoke the visas of people who are here as guests and are disrupting our higher education facilities. People are paying money. These kids pay money to go to school, and they have to walk through a bunch of lunatics who are here on student visas.
Disrupting the foreign policy of the United States.
I want to do more. I hope we can find more of these people.
That's pathetic, Mr.
In fact,
Secretary.
the other day, some guys led a riot. I forgot what university it was, and I asked, please, can you find the arrest records of all the people that were arrested at that riot at that campus? Because if any of them have a visa, we're going to revoke it.
I feel so much safer when you lock up people like Ms. Ostorg, Mr. Secretary.
We've had enough time on the subject. Thank you very much.
The Secretary's defense, that visas are privileges and not rights, and that diplomacy requires secrecy, may sound reasonable on the surface. But look closer. Those arguments have been used, time and again, to justify overreach and abuse. Yes, diplomacy requires discretion, but not deception. Yes, visas are privileges, but freedom of speech is not. The First Amendment is not a gift we extend to the agreeable. It's a shield we protect even for those whose opinions make us uncomfortable. Because the moment we start deciding whose speech is acceptable, we stop being a free society. And that is what makes this exchange so vital. It's not just about Van Hollen versus Rubio. It's about whether America can still tell the difference between justice and vengeance, between leadership and control. In times of division, moments like this force us to ask, what do we want America to represent? Are we a country that punishes protest and calls it patriotism? A country that lets children starve while congratulating itself on fiscal restraint? Or are we still capable of empathy, of recognizing that moral strength comes from compassion, not cruelty? Because the truth is, policies don't just shape politics, they shape people. They decide who lives and who dies, who gets to dream and who gets deported, who finds refuge and who is left behind. Every visa revoked, every aid shipment halted, every court order ignored chips away at the promise of justice this nation was built on. So when Van Hollen asked, "Have you no sense of decency?" it wasn't just a jab. It was a mirror held up to those in power, and to us, the public. Because our silence is their permission. We can't just watch these hearings as spectators. We have to become participants, informed, vocal, and unafraid. That means demanding transparency about foreign aid decisions. It means defending the independence of our courts. It means standing up for free speech, especially when it's inconvenient. And most importantly, it means remembering that decency is not weakness. Compassion is not naivete. In fact, it's the highest form of strength a democracy can have. Because when a government forgets to care, it forgets to govern. So ask yourself, when future generations look back at this moment, will they see a country that turned away, or one that stood up? The answer depends on us. Call your representatives. Ask them where they stand on humanitarian aid, refugee protection, and free speech. Don't let politics replace principle. Share this message, talk about it, and refuse to normalize indifference. Because the soul of democracy isn't found in who shouts the loudest. It's found in who still listens, who still cares, and who still acts when compassion becomes inconvenient. That is what Senator Van Hollen was fighting for. And that is what America, at its best, should stand for again.